Hey there, I'm Alex Kalish, and this is Practical Prompting, the podcast that turns generative AI hype into everyday wins. Each episode follows a two-act play. Act 1, I'm going to tackle a real-life headache with a single deep dive into how you can use generative AI to help. Act 2 zooms out to the bigger picture uses at work. Today's Act 1 spotlight is going to be about self-reflection and life coaching. By the end, you'll have some new ideas on how generative AI can help you overcome that mental block, maybe understand that feeling a little bit better, or shed new light on a situation. If you're actionable, nerdy, and ready for a side of dad jokes, we'll get into Act 2. And just grab your coffee, open your favorite chat window, or if you're on the road, keep your eyes on the road, and let's get prompting with Act 2, where I dive into my first 90 days using generative AI and how you can accelerate your own generative AI journey by learning from some of my mistakes and early missteps. Act 1. So, everyday use case today is going to be about self-reflection and mental load, or some sort of emotional component that maybe you're trying to work through. This is something that is it's one of the top uses of generative AI today. And so there's a lot of you that might already be using this, in which case there's going to be a couple new techniques on how to approach this. For those that are just starting out and maybe haven't tried thinking about using generative AI as a life coach or as self-reflection or as a way to work through some situations that are a little bit complicated. Maybe you don't understand what the different people are trying to mean in a specific situation. So let's dive into a couple different ways that you can attack this problem. First up, you can use generative AI from a mood ring perspective. Like an example prompt would be, give me a one-word weather report for my mood based on this current journal entry or based on my last chats. And give me a 30-second grounding exercise. This is an emotional labeling technique, and it also reduces some of the anxiety that you might feel. Generative AI is great at helping you understand what some of your own feelings might be stemming from, as well as being approachable from this is what a lot of people go through. It's very validating to hear generative AI, and you can ask it for quoted numbers, to talk about how prevalent some concerns are, like the prevalence of flying and how anxiety inducing that can be. Some folks jump on a plane, it's totally fine. A lot they struggle with the anxiety that goes along with it, or societal expectations. So just a quick mood ring, or like give me a weather report around my current mood based on my past chats or a recent journal entry. And what's better is that you can take a photo of your journal, and my handwriting's not the best in the world, but the current tooling actually does a really good job of using optical character recognition, which is just OCR. It's a fancy way of saying that it identifies what words are on the page or what letters are on the page, and then translates that into something consumable by generative AI. And so by using this, take a photo of my journal entry, can you give me a quick weather report on how I'm feeling right now, is a fantastic way to get started. You can also just use generative AI as a journal and say, hey, I'm feeling this way this morning. I woke up feeling kind of off base. What are some reasons, or why might this be the case? And that 5-line question or that 5-line reflection exercise is super valuable. You can say things like, ask me 5 questions that help me work through this block that I'm having, or from moving from facts to feelings and to a reframing exercise. Those questions will enable you to go back and forth with generative AI. Think of it as a collaborative tool. So, I like to personally advocate for mental health and seeing therapists. This doesn't replace therapy, and I highly recommend, and I've seen personally the value going through depression on my own a couple times throughout my life, that therapists make a huge impact on your life. An analogy I like to use is when you break a bone, you go see a medical doctor to fix bones. When you break a tooth, you go see a doctor to work on your teeth as a dentist. When your mind or emotions are broken, you should also think in terms of, well, let me go to a doctor that knows how to do this and how to work through this. The benefit with generative AI, though, is that it helps you in the moment. So instead of having to wait for a therapy visit, you can just, whenever an emotion strikes, you can just actually start asking questions and reflecting. And all of this builds context that you can then reference and bring up in a therapy discussion. Be like, hey, draft me based on the last month or last week of chats. What are some of the themes that I've been feeling and I can bring up in therapy? This 5-line reflection exercise really helps you move from facts into reframing and how you might be feeling about things. And it encourages some deeper self-inquiry without having to overwhelm and be like, there's somebody looking at me. If journaling feels heavy, just let the model carry the pencil and dictate to it. So another opportunity in the mental framing space is to have generative AI change the way you think by asking it, turn my negative thought, you can insert negative thought, or turn my negative thought into a 3-step cognitive ladder I can climb in 2 minutes. So what you're doing is you're asking generative AI to be helping you quickly reframe or move from a place of frustration or anxiety or some other negative emotion that is causing a lot of stress and move into a 2-minute exercise where you're out of that. And this is kind of like a pocket therapist, not replacing therapists, mind you, but it's a way for you to quickly get that kind of insight at your fingertips or, in this case, in your pocket. And then the last thing I want to talk about as just an Act 1 everyday use case is a future you. So you can ask generative AI to write a 150-word note from me 90 days in the future, celebrating one new mindset shift. So you're helping it to craft and envision the future. And this can help with the visualization techniques that a ton of different research has proved to be super valuable in the realm of actually making progress towards your goals. Generative AI here can be the mirror that you actually look into each morning, where you're looking back at yourself and helping reframe your own thought processes. This also helps you stick with practice, because if you know where the end state is or a goal state is, and you've kind of seen what that might feel like or what that might look like, all right, let me keep making tangible progress towards it. As a follow-up, you could say, hey, take this note and walk me through a roadmap on how to get there, week by week, day by day, hour by hour. So again, this is just a way for you to reconceptualize how these tools can significantly impact your life. Let's move on to Act 2, where I'm going to be talking about business insights here. And we're going to go over, hey, look, Act 1 talked about mental health and the spark that might provide using generative AI. I want to use Act 2 to zoom in on the 90-day ramp that I had for generative AI. Like how I went from using generative AI twice a week, maybe less, to more than 10 interactions a day, and how you can shortcut that curve. You don't necessarily need to spend the full 90 days that I spent to get to a more frequent usage in order to get a tremendous amount of value. So there's generally 4 phases that I went through in the first 90 days. So the first one was like exploring, fumbling around, figuring out what kind of things were possible. Then there was this pause, this reboot where I actually did very little before getting into this personal spark. And my personal spark actually related to the emotional component that I alluded to and talked about earlier. And then we went into then I went into this workplace flywheel where all of a sudden I was thinking about generative AI throughout the workday, breaking down tasks into generative AI components and adding significant value in my workplace. So let's set the Wayback Machine towards, I think it was around August of 2024. Let the listener know that at that time, models were significantly less, they were doing less than what they're doing today. Their capabilities were a lot smaller, their hallucinations more great. The jagged edge of generative AI was more jagged, I would say, with more dips than there were opportunities. And by the time you're listening to this, months in the future, their models are going to be improving even from what's possible today. But in this exploration, this fumbling around that I did the first 4 weeks or so, I was fresh from an AI conference in August 2024. And I was trying to use it primarily from a business perspective, and specifically related to document summarization, fact finding. And I was using it 2 to 5 times a week, and I was forcing myself to use it. This was like, I came out of this conference, I had an exploratory, like very exciting, I had this spark going on. And the hurdles that I was facing were that every time I wanted to use generative AI, I had to sanitize internal information before putting it out into a model that could analyze it. And this was a huge drag. Like, I spent more time sanitizing documentation in order to just maybe get some business value out of it, where I was like, man, this is just not really helping very much. And the early models really felt more along the lines of a meh. There was some amount of value there, but it almost took about as much time for me to sanitize the document, put it into generative AI to get something out of it. And it's like, by that time, I probably would have just been able to more quickly get the answer I was looking for. From there, I went to this pause. I spent 2 weeks, it might have been up to 4, where I kind of just hit a wall. I didn't really use generative AI. Zero usage. I was a little bit I don't want to say fed up, but I was disheartened with the results and the amount of effort that went into using it. I was also overwhelmed. Like, the generative AI is a step change in just all of knowledge work. And knowledge work can span the gamut from just reading things online, researching, summarization, making decision making in general, and even there's some creative components to that generative AI can start working towards now. And I was overwhelmed. Like, there were so many things that generative AI could do. I was like, I don't even know what to do. And as I coach people and I work through training workshops and I get in front of folks, this feeling of being overwhelmed is super normal. So if this is resonating with you, you're not alone. Like, it's part of the process. It's a whole new world out there, and it can be overwhelming. And there's some amount of like tool fatigue. I was like, man, I'm just trying to use this tool and it's so not working. And so I found that I was just stressed out. I was like, this isn't adding as much value as I need it to be in a business context. And I don't have enough, I'm a busy person. Like, I don't have enough time to spend the time to learn this thing that is almost taking as much time to do what I want it to do as I would have taken in the first place. So why would I even spend that time? Then there was this personal spark, and I don't really remember where it came from. I think it was maybe after a specific therapy visit, and I started thinking, I don't do a great job of noting my thoughts and emotions throughout weeks and days, and coming to these therapy discussions with a really good understanding of what I should be working on. It's kind of it was a lot of effort on the therapist to tease out what the important things to talk about were. And I didn't really have a good agenda because I wasn't tracking or keeping an eye on it. And so I discovered that I wanted to move into a self-reflection standpoint. And I started asking generative AI more reflective questions. And all of a sudden I went from not using it because I was paused to using it like once or twice a day. And it was primarily for my own personal growth. And I was trusting the model with my feelings and like thoughts. I was trusting it with, hey, how should I think about this situation at work, or I'm feeling this particular way, but I don't know why. Can you help me understand why? Or I don't even know what I'm feeling right now. How can you help me understand, like, but it doesn't feel right. And generative AI really helped me through that. And I was able to start condensing into themes like, oh, this is generally what I'm feeling. And this reinvigorated my personal desire to get into generative AI. And I went from not using it, there was an important component of getting this spark back. And that was when my dad, he just nudged me and said, look, this matters. This is really impactful. You should try reopening these and really get using it. Because before he was asking like, hey, how often have you been using it? And I'm like, I'm not really seeing the value. It's kind of dragging my feet, maybe answering and inflating my numbers a little bit, especially during that pause time frame. I was like, maybe I'm like a couple times a week, when it was really like not really using it at all. And so that nudge in combination with this personal growth, this therapy mindset really changed from, okay, I feel like I should be using it more, but I'm not, to I actually want to use this. I'm seeing the value personally. And when I started seeing it personally, I started being able to realize I can use it for different things. I can just ask it crazy questions and see what it says. And so I started, and I went to phase 4, where I went to this workplace flywheel, and I've talked about this in previous podcasts as well, but listing 10 ways to use generative AI today is a fantastic tool for helping you just think about ways to use it, because that's really complicated. And when you're talking about time and the amount of time spent to like actually figure out these type of things, having the desire to just explore is super critical. This list 10 ways to use Gen AI today, or I'm this role, walk me through 10 ways that I could use generative AI to solve my biggest problem, or project my biggest problem based on this current work project or theme or uploaded document or whatnot. List 10 ways that I can use generative AI to improve performance. And then I started actually doing them. I'd be like, oh man, can you just walk me through how I would do number 2 tactically? Be like, tactically walk me through the steps to implement number 2, because that sounds like a cool generative AI use. And as I started doing that more and more, I was turning insights into repeatable workflows, where my mindset shifted from, I have to think about using generative AI. I don't even know how to use it, to, let me start with generative AI. Let me ask AI first. And that's actually on my little sticker right next to my trackpad. I've got a little sticker that says ask AI first. If you want one of those, you can definitely hit me up. And there's a couple different ways that we can get those over to you. So I want to kind of go back through these phases and talk you through some of the lessons learned and the ways that you could speed progress here. And understand that it's totally normal to go through this journey, these ups and downs of usage. It doesn't make you behind, it doesn't make you ahead. It's your own journey. I do believe firmly that the best time to be using generative AI was yesterday. And the second best time is right now. If you're listening to this podcast and these are some of the new things, keep in mind that this world is evolving so quickly. Getting started is, I can't stress this enough, is critical. So, from a tactical perspective, when you're exploring and fumbling around, what I want to have you try and do is just a drill. Pick any public article and run a prompt that says, summarize this in 7 bullets. The last one has to be an action step. And the goal here is just to start figuring out how you can start leveraging generative AI to look around corners, to think about things differently, to speed a summarization. So instead of reading the article, ask generative AI to just summarize it and give you an action bullet at the end. And this is all going to help in relation to, instead of touching on private data and working through whatever systems you have internally, you can do this right now with the off-the-shelf tools. When you're in this maybe pause, maybe this reboot standpoint where you're not using it as much as you know you should or know you need to, or have a bunch of people jamming down your throat saying, you got to use this, schedule a 30-minute play sprint, a time where you're just blocked off in your calendar to just identify like how to even play around with generative AI. Take that block and use a prompt like show me three ways off the shelf generative AI can help me in my role, and give me one quirky use case. Show me 3 ways that I can use generative AI as a person right now, facing whatever challenge you're facing, and one quirky thing that I haven't thought of before. Just play around. Ask generative AI to list you out 3, 10, 5, however many you want. I generally recommend the rule of 10. Different ways of thinking or different ways of usage. When you find one that's super interesting you haven't thought of before, ask a follow-up question. Be like, hey, number 7, sounds pretty cool. Can you describe it a little bit more? And this is all just helping change your neural pathways to, again, ask AI first. When you find your personal spark, maybe that's something that's a little bit more, it's just daily life type things where, maybe it's finances and you start having it look at finances. Maybe it's home improvement or like mechanical information about how to jumpstart a car. Maybe it's taking a photo of what's in your fridge and being like, craft me a recipe for tonight because I don't really want to think about it and I only have 20 minutes and these are my ingredients. These are great ways to start realizing that it's a really cool tool that can do a lot, and find your personal spark, something that you're personally interested in, that you're passionate about, and try using generative AI in that space. As you find it to be very valuable, because I've yet to find a space where it's not super valuable, you'll move from this spark of curiosity and intentionality into a workplace perspective where now you kind of are starting to get the feel for it. You'll take an idea and run it into an action. Generate 10 different use cases for generative AI in my job. Okay, I picked this one. Build 3 steps in order to implement it today. And now you've joined that workplace flywheel. As a caveat to that, or as a follow-on to that, take those lessons learned and provide them to your network. It's a huge benefit overall to spark creativity in how the workplace is changing. Some of the metrics that you can use from a personal perspective is touches per day. How many times are you touching generative AI? And it's a really easy barometer for success on moving from, I know I should be using generative AI, to I'm just a super user. I'm using it all the time. You hear people that are just, oh, I use generative AI for all the things. And you look up at those folks, or at least I did. I looked up and I was like, man, how do you come up with all these ideas? And it really stems from getting in front of the tool and using it. You can also use like minutes reclaimed. Track an action that would take you a certain amount of time before and after. And you'll find that like when you use generative AI effectively, you can shave months of time off what otherwise would be research that you have to, compilation, analysis, and critical thinking, all to find and create a roadmap or move revenue 10% improvement. Here's the plan to do so. Another metric that you can help is just a stress indicator. Think about generative AI and how much stress it's bringing to the table, or just your general life. Give it a quick 1 to 10 in the morning, before your first prompt, and then after. And this is something that you can track, just a quick Google Sheet or Excel file, and see the impact day over day, week over week. A couple common pitfalls. Definitely don't upload sensitive documents. Practice with public information first. Practice with public articles and public texts. And when you get to the point where you can, now start using your internal tools or advocate for enterprise licensing. A lot of off-the-shelf generative AI tools right now offer enterprise licenses that keep all of the information cloistered away and is not used to be trained on by the models, which means that there's a layer removed from where the data is being held. Beware of like the perfect tool paralysis that I mentioned in previous podcasts. Just commit to using one prompt a day, and by doing so, you're going to become more familiar. GenAI can surface a lot of options, but at the end of the day, you still sign off on the decision. And that's a key important guardrail. You're a human in the loop. You're part of this process. AI and generative AI is an augmentative force. It's not a replacement for you. It can help you move a lot faster, and that's of significant value. One last common, or not a pitfall, but I want to make sure that you recognize it. This is not to replace a therapist. Therapists are super valuable and they bring wealth of insight. Generative AI can help, but also be cognizant when you're using generative AI, the way you phrase things can make certain outcomes more prevalent. And so recognize that it's not a perfect tool. It's a really good 95% solution that you can use right away, but it's not 100%. And I just want to end with a quick, in 90 days, I kind of went from this AI tourist to an AI teammate. I think that if you approach from a standpoint of curiosity and usage and try using these tools more and more frequently, you'll be able to follow that ladder and you'll just skip the layover, that couple week period where there's just a dry spell not using it. And instead, you'll go right into usage and getting your own tremendous value out of it. I'd like to challenge you to run that idea to action loop tonight and every day, and just report your first workplace win. You can do that just over email. Would appreciate any sort of sharing as well as ratings. This show is a passion project at this point, and my goal is to just bring this insight across the board for everywhere. Your feedback and engagement helps me to figure out what the next topics will be. I also, in the future, plan to have guest individuals on to talk about their own journeys or things that they're seeing and really come to the table with some practical prompting. And with that, thank you very much for this episode of Practical Prompting. Have a great rest of your day, morning, evening, or night.